from the studios of the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg, welcome to Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs.
Hi, welcome to Prime Minister Talks. This is Silveria Jacobs, the Prime Minister of St. Martin. I'm trying our best to ensure that we bring you information of current events, especially important things that are going on within government. And today I have two special guests, two young ladies, both senior policy advisors, one within the Ministry of TEAT, one within the Ministry of FROMI. I'll allow them to tell you who they are and what they do. Ladies, welcome to Prime Minister's Talk.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Jessica. Please tell my audience who you are, what you're doing, and why you're my special guest today.
So my name is Jessica Rogers. As you mentioned, I am a senior policy advisor within the policy department of the Ministry of TEAT, so Economy, Transportation, Telecommunications, and I've been here now for about 2 years. My main focus is energy, basket of goods, and also economic modeling, so our outlooks and forecasting for the country.
And you're also a part of the
Energy Work Group.
Great. And then we go to Raitza. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. My name is Raitza Narain. I am from the Ministry of FROMI, also a senior policy advisor in the policy department, mainly responsible for spatial planning related topics. But of course, our department is responsible for preparing policies and legislation within the realm of our ministry. So spatial planning, environment, infrastructure, and housing.
Housing,
Yes.
and you're also a part of our
energy work group. Yes.
Right. So I've been having the discussions. We've done a lot of statements in press briefing, and recently we weren't able to have the full work group, but we did go to the Caribbean Conference on Energy and Climate. So that was really a nice experience. Got a lot of play, and I think it's important that the people of St. Martin know, even though we're not as far as our colleagues within the kingdom, that we are working diligently to get to, a place where we're dealing with energy in a more renewable and with alternatives other than fossil fuels. So basically, what is, for instance, within your ministry, what is being done in regards to that?
So right now for the Ministry of TEAT, alongside the other members of the work group, which is considered more of an interministerial work group, we are focusing on updating our national energy policy. So for those that are aware of energy initiatives and what takes place on St. Martin, the policy existed since 2014. However, as a country, we were unable to kind of meet some of those targets, adapt to the infrastructure developments, and of course now with a lot of the sustainable development goals that the region in particular is looking at, and of course climate change and what we're experiencing, it's important now to update these policies reflective to where we are. We've had a lot of challenges in the past, not only just hurricanes, but also pandemics. So now it's to take that into consideration as well as we're planning long term of what our energy infrastructure and our policies and any future developments would look like. So that's what we're focusing on.
Right, so you've been busy with this, you have an existing policy. How much longer, because they keep asking me, how much longer you think before we can say we've finalized the energy policy, the update to the energy policy?
So the ministry, along with the work group, is hoping that we can have a draft presented to the Council of Ministers before the ending of 2023. However, of course, we know that the policies don't naturally exist just by the ministries coming together and or the work group establishing their parameters. It's a lot of stakeholder consultations, not only just with government-owned entities, but also with the public. And a big part of that means the community has to play their role. So what are the socio-economic benefits of that? And of course, change can only happen when money is presented. So by looking at a lot of the envelopes and any financing opportunities is important as well. So our goal is ending of 2023 for an updated policy, but should things differ, it may be Q1 of 2024.
Okay. And for you, Raitza, in terms of the Ministry of FROMI and your input within the Energy Policy Work Group, where is then the Ministry of FROMI? Where do we stand as it relates to this?
I think for FROMI, an important role that we play is, of course, we are in charge of managing our infrastructure, our environment and domain land. So for us, I think it's important that we make sure that land is available, for instance, or that environmental impact assessments are done to better facilitate, the transition and also the production of renewable energy. I think that's an important role where FROMI comes in. Yeah.
Right. So your work group consists of, I know what it consists of, but maybe you want to share who are the other ministries or entity stakeholders that form key part of the work group?
So we have the Ministry of TIAT, we have the Ministry of FROMI, we also have BAC, which falls under General Affairs, but we also do have input from BTP, so Bureau of Telecommunications and Post, and also a representative from GEBE.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep pushing because I don't like long deadlines. Impatience a bit, and just seeing the potential out there so that we can move forward. And so the last thing for this segment would be what bottlenecks you see in terms of the projects.
Energy on the whole has a lot of different components. It's not just the change of having our one utility company, so GEBE, make the necessary investments to be able to switch over, but it's doing the proper assessments to make sure stuff is the right fit, assessing the socioeconomic benefits of and disadvantages of what this transition may mean, and also again by tapping into the right financing, that we don't put ourselves as a country in a position where we're making such a large change that we can't alter or make any necessary tweaks to ensure the resilience of this sustainable development. And as you are aware, PM, part of the conversation that came up while we were at the conference in Aruba as of April and May, it was more so that we have to ensure as small developing islands that because we play such a small role when it comes to energy and climate change, it's really costing us more than we anticipated. And it has a lot that needs to take place, but those are the three main pillars. So working with our utility company, looking at the socioeconomic disadvantages and advantages, and ensuring that we have the right financing along with any legislation or technical support that's required.
Great. We're coming up to the end of segment 1. You see how quickly that goes. When you come back, you will hear some more about some of the socioeconomic challenges, as well as maybe sources of funding that may be out there for us. Stay tuned. This is Prime Minister Talks.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylveria Jacobs.
Humans, animals, organisms, and plants are all part of our existence on this earth, each living and surviving while contributing to a collective and balanced ecosystem that allows us all to exist interdependently, none more valuable or important than the next. Sharks, stingrays, sea turtles, marine mammals like dolphins and whales, stony coral and brown pelicans are all part of the animal species on St. Martin that are protected. They are protected because they are endangered. It is illegal to catch, disturb, injure, and/or kill any of these protected species or even disturb their nesting or living habitat. If you have caught any of these endangered animal species unintentionally, release them immediately. If you see someone violating these laws, kindly let them know that their actions are wrong, unethical, and illegal. If you see any of these irregularities, report the incident to the Nature Foundation, the Coast Guard, or the police. By protecting our natural environment and our endangered species, we can maintain a healthy biodiversity and a balanced ecosystem that we all can exist and thrive and call home. Our home, St. Martin.
This message was brought to you by environmentalist Tazio Bervuts and the Department of Communication.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylveria Jacobs.
Welcome back to Prime Minister Talk. We're talking about sustainable development goals. We're talking about climate. We're talking about energy. And this is all a segue from this wonderful conference that St. Martin was able to be a part of that was hosted by the Kingdom in Aruba. Most recently, where one or two members of the Energy Work Group were able to be there to support us in person while the others did so virtually. And today with me, I have Jessica Rogers from the Ministry of TIAT, as well as Ms. Narain I hope I'm saying it correctly. As the liaison for VROMI and policy, senior policy as well, what kind of projects is currently related to climate change within the Ministry of VROMI? Maybe you can give us some info on that.
Okay, we have, for instance, recently finalized the building code. Yes, we have had training internally on how this code is going to be applied, and it pertains to the stronger resilience of our infrastructure, our built environment against higher category hurricanes, earthquakes, flooding, storms, etc. So that is to improve our infrastructure and our built environment. And then in regards to the nature policy that we have established last year, we also have a project ongoing funded through RESEMBIT, Project Corina, which stands for Coastal Resilience Needs Assessment. And this project is it hasn't started yet. We're in the beginning phases of hiring a project manager, but it entails capacity enhancement of the ministry, but also raising awareness for society to engage in more sustainable practices. Specific outputs for this project are, for instance, a coastal and marine risk and vulnerabilities assessment, also a coastal and resilience adaptation plan, but also it supports the gathering of data, and especially baseline data. So there are going to be baseline biodiversity studies in terrestrial and coastal and marine environment as well.
I think that's a wonderful thing. Based on the fact that we didn't have Kippy, who is not here either,
exactly,
working in
Ildiko Gilders, yes.
Wilders is working. Gilders is working as another senior policy advisor, also part of the energy work group. And I know when the Corina was launched, because it is through the intervention of Buck, and I, as Minister of AZ, had to sign off on these projects. I was very happy to see these projects and be there for the launch. So I know she's working very, very hard on that.
Yes.
But we do need to bring more awareness to the public, because a lot more people are aware now of the environment, the challenges, etc., and they want to know that we're working hard to protect that. So the nature policy is one, and I will ensure and ask you that go to the website, right, of VROMI to be able to see these policies and see, within which cadres we have to work as St. Martin. And I'm very happy that we're able to forward that agenda. In terms of that, is there any entity that we're working with to be able to execute the projects that relate to our environment, and specifically the Corina?
Yeah, well, the Nature Foundation, the St. Martin Nature Foundation, is our direct partner in this, helping us implement and execute the different outputs of Corina project. Yes.
Great.
And as I was saying, we're also busy hiring a project manager as well. Yeah.
So I look forward to seeing the development of this, and we will keep the people of St. Martin updated as we move forward with these sustainable projects for St. Martin. And in terms of the transition to energy as well as climate change, how do you think, or what can we do, or what are your thoughts on how we can synergize these two?
So I think that's $1 million question for a lot of small developing states right now. And what we see as a work group, which really came more to realization after the conference, is just not an energy work group, but because we're the same ministries that have to work together, it's a focus of having to do energy and climate. Now, of course, that just means that we need to synergize what we're doing internally and ensuring that we're communicating that effectively to the public. But we're looking at it from the element of how do the two cross each other, or where can they combat each other? And we'll use a simple example. It may just simply mean that if we're trying to be a bit more energy efficient, I'm going to take out my old AC that I have that I probably got or was installed in this home that I've been renting for 10 years and install a new AC for the summer because it's extremely hot, again, because of climate change, but it's now going to be an inverted AC that's a bit more energy efficient. But what do I now do with this old AC, right? And how does this waste affect the climate? Where does it go? How does it affect our environment, right? So it's the little things, and I think it's more of kind of explaining to people, how can we upcycle? How can we recycle? How can we allow someone else to use it if its longevity is not there? Because the socioeconomic benefits of that means someone else may be able to use it until they can join the bandwagon of being more
Instead of
efficient.
it just going to waste.
Correct. And I think those are the little quick wins that we can start to promote within our society of what we can do and how we can do that. And I do believe that by working closely with the Ministry of Romi and the Ministry of TIAT, not only just from how it impacts our economy from society's perspective, but also from the business element, right? And how it affects our tourism product. Because we're still heavily reliant on that, and engaging our tourists for them to also understand that when they come here, we respect our island. Here's what we would like you to do. Are you contributing and doing your part when you visit our shores to ensure that they remain as beautiful as you arrived, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how we would allow for that synergy of the advantages and disadvantages of working with energy and climate change.
I think it will remain an ongoing discussion. We've recently heard about funds being made available. You mentioned that in the first segment about one of the challenges of bottlenecks. How do you see the pledge of support that we've received from the Dutch government towards the CAS Islands as Curaçao, Aruba, St. Martin?
Part of the discussion we had during the conference was, of course, Curaçao, Aruba, and St. Martin are totally different when it comes to these envelopes opening up and what we would be tapping into. Of course, we're directly within a hurricane belt. We are a little further behind than these islands as well in regards to energy development and also climate change to a certain extent. But we do see the funds being able to support government and the respective ministries with projects that we're ready to roll out, any sort of policies that need to be updating, a lot of technical or legislative support, which we lack in-house to ensure that we can meet some of those timelines and even assist our entities that we're working with. So as my colleague mentioned, the Nature Foundation or even GEBE at any point in time as well.
Okay, yes, so much information, so little time. We've come to the end of segment 2. We'll come back, we'll finish up in the last segment with even more information for you on how you can help us in the transition to renewable energy.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
Humans, animals, organisms, and plants are all part of our existence on this earth, each living and surviving while contributing to a collective and balanced ecosystem that allows us all to exist interdependently, none more valuable or important than the next. Sharks, stingrays, sea turtles, marine mammals like dolphins and whales, stony coral and brown pelicans are all part of the animal species on St. Martin that are protected. They are protected because they are endangered. It is illegal to catch, disturb, injure, and/or kill any of these protected species or even disturb their nesting or living habitat. If you have caught any of these endangered animal species unintentionally, release them immediately. If you see someone violating these laws, kindly let them know that their actions are wrong, unethical, and illegal. If you see any of these irregularities, report the incident to the Nature Foundation, the Coast Guard, or the police. By protecting our natural environment and our endangered species, we can maintain a healthy biodiversity and a balanced ecosystem that we all can exist and thrive and call home. Our home, St. Martin.
This message was brought to you by environmentalist Tazio Bervuts and the Department of Communication.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
Welcome back to Prime Minister Talks. I'm talking about something with two young ladies who, it really gets me going in the morning. It keeps me up at night, but it's so important because it affects us all. And if you were listening earlier to the second segment, Jessica was talking about some of the benefits that we can garner through the funds that have been made available. But of course, we'll have to do the preparatory work and actually prepare the projects to be submitted to the Dutch government via the Ministry of AZK, Energy and Climate. Thanks to the Minister, Rob Jetten, for really pushing it, as well as some of them are possible through BZK. So we have to now determine what we're doing, what kind of support we can get so that we can catch up, because we want to achieve some of the goals also by 2030. Now, as we're bringing more awareness to the population, the business community also has a role to play, and I think TIAD can also play a role there. So how can businesses and industries effectively implement energy transition or management systems so that they are also playing their role?
What we've realized as a ministry, not only from the enforcement aspect, but also from the policy side of things, is that when it becomes affordable or when it seems to be the best bang for your buck, businesses take their own initiative, and that's always the best first step, right? Not having to be dependent on government, having to force their hand to say, this is what we're doing, so this is the trajectory you have to take, but them understanding their role in society and how that will then work out for others is important. So we'll give an example for you have the American University of the Caribbean. They have a setup where they do have some solar panels in addition to Lucky's Cosmetics, which is in Cahill as well. But then that also means that we have to ensure from government's end that these entities that are taking the initiative that we can accommodate with our infrastructure, as my colleague mentioned as well. So as much as we are all excited that we do have entities that will look at what works best for them as a mixture of alternative forms of energy, we want to ensure that it's also not damaging our infrastructure while we're still doing assessments to ensure that this is the right mix for us. So we are quite excited to see entities like DYNAF existing and promoting how they can assist businesses with that transition. But we do encourage everyone to still have that conversation with government and the respective ministries and departments, right, to ensure that you're not going too far and your investments can't be seen in the long run because government isn't ready for such initiatives.
But also in terms of what type of bulbs they use, there's a lot that we can do transitioning to less usage, because the reducing part, maybe you can't transition right away, but we can all look at different ways to reduce. And that's part of the awareness campaign that we'll be rolling out, reducing the waste that you produce as well, because that makes a difference also for climate change. And there's so many other ways which we will continue to promote via all possible mediums on government, through DECOM, of course. But for me, it's important that, as you're saying, some businesses are already realizing that there is a change coming. There are worldwide trends happening. And even though the big debate is on how much will the temperature actually go down if everybody does their part, that big question is being asked. At the end of the day, we must think about the earth as a place we all inhabit. So let's do our part, even though, as you said, we produce a minuscule amount of carbon emissions. How can it be, Raisa, how can it be more integrated energy efficiency, be more integrated into urban planning and infrastructure from a VROMI perspective?
I think, as I just mentioned before, we updated the building code, so you can, of course, implement certain regulations to facilitate, for instance, more solar panels on buildings. But also, I think through zoning, you can encourage, facilitate, regulate renewable energy production within certain areas. What else? And through our zoning ordinance, for instance, through the reinstatement of Article 28A, we can now require civil works permits for works of profound nature, meaning that before large developments are executed and via environmental impact assessment is needed to make sure that the area is, resilient enough or can withstand this development. And if it is not, such permits can be denied as well.
I think that's a great initiative. I mean, a lot of people have seen a lot of things happening, and actually this sitting government got the blame, but these permits were issued way before. And so they're already issued. We will continue, and I'm happy to know that the Article 28A has been reinstated because it was out for some time, and that we're looking at ways to preserve the paradise aspect of this island, because I think if you overdevelop as well, you lose what is actually attractive about the island. And we do, within disaster risk management, have to do all these assessments and ensure that we're prepared for what can inevitably, hit our shores based on where we are in the Caribbean. Any other words that you would want to say, leave our viewers with in terms of from an ETT or from a VROMI perspective in terms of climate change and the transition to renewable and sustainable energy in the achievement of our goals? I'll start with you.
Sorry, I'm still not sure.
I would like to mention that to the public in particular, from the Ministry of TIAT overall, we focus not only just on businesses, licenses, policies, but we also have maritime, civil aviation. We look at the economy and the island as our product. Remember, we are heavily reliant on tourism, but we do encourage the businesses to take their own initiatives where necessary. So as the PM mentioned, if you're a business that's using plastic bags, look for biodegradable. If you're a business that is a restaurant or a cafe, start using products that can decompose or compostable. Take those initiatives, look at what some of our neighboring islands are doing. But remember, we are within a society where folks still need to be able to afford to live and afford to have experiences. So let's play our part. Please stay in tune with government. Our current Council of Ministers are trying their best to ensure that we tap into these funds so that we can too become sustainable by 2030 to 2050, along with the SDG goals and what the Netherlands is doing.
Thank you.
I would say, from the Ministry of VROMI perspective, we are, of course, responsible for the built environment, but also for the natural environment. So in terms of, more development coming to the island, it is important for us to be aware of the fact that we need to work with nature and not against it. So for instance, for new developments, we need to look at how we can integrate the nature aspect, the environmental aspect, and the social aspect at once, and not only look at the economic side of things. So I would like, people to be aware of that as well.
Thank you. For me, on behalf of the government of St. Martin and these very hardworking young people who I'm so happy are on board, because we always talk about capacity issues, and gender equity, at least we're meeting that goal. We do have quite some policy workers who are female, so we're having a say at the table where decisions are being made. I'm super proud of the work that these young ladies are doing, and we will continue to update you, people of St. Martin, because it is not just up to government, it is really up to each and every one of us to contribute to our sustainability moving forward. So stay tuned to more announcements coming through this medium, Prime Minister Talks, as well as all other productions through our Department of Communications. I'm Silveria Jacobs. Be safe, take care of the earth. We all want to be healthy. Have a blessed day.